Hi, Andrew.
Hi, Lidija.
Well, first of all, I want to say it's such a privilege and honor for me to take this opportunity to talk to you about what is most precious in my life, which is my practice. Practice being the work, but also my spiritual practice and how I am in the world, which is very closely related to you being a part of it. I have been your client you've been my therapist for almost 30 years. You have been practicing psychotherapy for over 50 years and had hundreds of, I think, thousands of hours of working with people. And I want to frame my question about this practice of yours more through the lens of spiritual practice, because you never gave the impression to me that this is your work, that you kind of need to put the hat on and then go and be a therapist. I always felt that there is this presence about you of being you. And that's what was most infectious. So I would like to ask you how that came about to be your practice, and how is perhaps, I'm reading your book Credo now for the second time, and just hearing a lot about your childhood and the way how you came to be in the world. How did that inform you to do what you do and to be who you are?
God knows. I don't know. I just tell you what comes to mind. So first of all, I think that the body, the mind or psyche or soul, and the spirit, we have different words for it, but language is just a poor map of reality. And just because we have words for those things and it sounds like they are separate things, doesn't mean that they are. I think that you cannot separate body, mind, soul, spirit, psyche. It's all one. And anything that goes on from one point of view affects all the other ways of looking at things. What goes on in the body affects the psyche and the spirit. Whatever goes on in the spirit affects the psyche and the body, back and forth, because there is only one thing. Really, non-duality is the only reality. And as soon as we start talking, we are not real. We are poking around in the map, and we have left the territory. The territory is so complex that whenever we use words, it's just a very rudimentary map. It helps, and it can take us closer to reality, or it can make it harder to be in touch with reality. Language can be used either way. And actually, it was Osho who said, how do you know that you are in the presence of a true guru or a charlatan? Which was a good question for him to pose. And he said, when you are with someone, if you feel you're getting closer to your own heart, then you're in the presence of a guru. And if in the presence of someone you realize that you are being taken further and further away from your heart, you're in the presence of a charlatan. I think he's right. So I think there is nothing one can do that isn't spiritual. And as long as I'm incarnated into this body, there is nothing I can do without my body or my psyche. So body, mind, psyche, all the same to me. Now, what would be more a spiritual perspective. I'm not interested in the body perspective. It doesn't mean that it's not fascinating how monkeying with the body can change the mind and the spirit. But I'm more interested in the psyche and the spirit. And really, the spirit is anything, the spiritual is just the experience of somehow realizing that I'm a small part of something much larger than I am. It's nothing complex. It's not about God. It's not about saints. It's not about, seven-headed dragons. It's about realizing that I'm a small part of something much larger. So are you. So is everybody I meet. And so what I'm practicing is realizing that we suffer enormously when we forget that really my will is just an aberration. It's a mistake. Like a psychoanalyst said, who doesn't claim to be spiritual, that the only proper function of the will is to will, not to will. Now, why would she say that? That's Marion Milner. Because my cravings, now I use the word craving instead of desire because it's somehow more powerful, more to the point. Cravings distract one from what is essential. So surrendering to a situation is how I want to be moved, not by my own will. Mm-hmm. So if I just wait until I'm moved to say something, then I'm already in the spiritual realm, rather than the egoistic realm where I am going to say something. Like what I have to say is peanuts compared to what might come through me if I surrender to the situation. Who was it? Simone Weil made it very explicit. She said, nobody can have a direct encounter with God because it would burn out your circuits. So God speaks to you through me, and God speaks to me through you. And so she thinks whenever she speaks to another human being, she wants to be a conduit, wants to channel God to the other, and she is a third wheel in the love affair of God and that person. So in a way, she steps aside and watches what comes through her to the other person. And it's as big a surprise to her as to the other person. When she can't step aside, when she can't leave the lovers alone, then she's just interfering with what is important. So I think that's a perfect description of in a way, I don't have to know. I have to be. If I thought that I have to know everything, I would be deaf to the situation. If I can know a lot, but if I can ignore it and give myself to the situation in the moment, then I think I'm doing well. I'm dancing with the universe. I let the universe dance me. But I don't. A lot of human suffering is due to willing things that shouldn't be willed. Anxiety, for example, is 100% to do with willing. Once you learn not to will, you will never experience anxiety. It's that simple. And in a way, there is a resistance against realizing that. I mean, I can say this 100 times, and people may even say, and they marginalize it. It's like no one wants to know, because partly when you realize the truth of something, then your life changes. Knowing that something is true and not changing your life is useless. That's nothing. You know, it's like you know something when your life changes. So reading Laing's books, you know, Laing was my teacher. Most people now, psychiatrists, psychologists, say Laing is passé. It's like, yeah, well, once he was interesting, but we have surpassed him. Nobody surpassed Laing. Laing cannot be surpassed. Laing has been successfully marginalized. Laing has been successfully ignored, because if you realize what he's talking about, you have to change your life. A psychotherapist would have to change his or her practice. A psychiatrist would have to change his and her practice if they understood what Laing is talking about. But rather than change what I believe in, change what I do, it's easier to marginalize all thought, all ideas, all realizations that might interfere with what I'm already doing. So that's one response to what you asked. What it has to do with my childhood and upbringing, well, one thing for sure is that given what I went through, I wouldn't have survived. I would have died without the kindness of strangers. So what kept me alive wasn't my own smarts. It's like, it's the network of humanity who somehow saved me. And so I figure, I didn't know this, it was mostly unconscious, but I figure that to my patients, I'm a stranger. Like when we first met, you were a stranger. I was a stranger to you. And because strangers saved my life, I feel like I owe strangers some kindness. The kindness I received, I want to pass on. And you know, people weren't doing it on purpose. People were doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. So that's why I think in a psychotherapy practice, I never help on purpose. I don't do anything on purpose. It's just occasionally keeping company, not leaving someone alone, taking someone seriously, having a real conversation helps. It helped me when I felt on the verge of giving up or despair, or even physically when, you know, like there were people who would have been happy to exterminate me. And there were others who risked their life to save me from extermination. That's pretty big. I wasn't fully aware of it. I couldn't have talked about it. I didn't have the words for it, but I think it deeply affected me. That and you don't have to be Buddhist, you don't have to be Christian. You just have to be open to the miracle of kindness, especially in a world where there is so much cruelty.
I remember you saying once, I mean, you were 3.5 years old in Hungary. You were born in 1940, so right at the verge of the war. You were 3.5 years old when your father and your mother were taken into labor camp and into Auschwitz. And you were saved by a woman, Irene Agaz, who was there with you, with her children, for 1.5 years. And I remember you saying to me that you've learned to die then. Because you had to actually carry another name and not say who you are, because you know that you would be in a great trouble, but at the same time being with somebody who is caring and risking their own lives. And reminded me of a quote that you were putting in your book Credo with Joanne Halifax, who says we have to let go of our addiction, and our biggest addiction is the addiction to life. And if we don't let go of those addictions, including that one, that we can be susceptible to evil.
Yeah, yeah, it's the craving. The craving always feels that if I don't get my craving fulfilled, I'll suffer unbearably. So I'll do anything to fulfill my cravings. That's where the cruelty comes in. And it's a not all that difficult discovery that no matter how hard the craving is, I don't have to do anything about it.
I'm wondering
So,
why you think that the craving is so dominant, because Buddhism talks about this, the craving, the aversion, the ignorance. Why is the craving so predominant? It's almost like an infectious in our society.
well, I think it's to do with the fact that we have 3 brains. We have a reptilian brain that keeps us alive when somebody hits us over the head and we lose consciousness. So there is a reptilian brain. On top of it, there is a horse brain. And then on top of it, there is a little bit of neocortex, which is the human brain. And the 3 brains are not coordinated. Evolution fucked up with humans. We are a mistake. Like the dinosaurs were a mistake. And there are no more dinosaurs. And I think we are a mistake. So enjoy living while we can. But unless we can coordinate the 3 brains, we'll be in trouble. And we have been in trouble. The horse brain has nothing but cravings or aversions. In order to survive, evolution doesn't give a damn about your happiness. Evolution doesn't care a damn about your awareness. All evolution cares about is that you have children. Evolution cares that you survive until you fuck and have children. And after that, it doesn't care about you. Now, that doesn't require brains. That doesn't require spirituality. That requires an animal. That's the horse brain. And in order to survive until you can create children, you have to avoid fire. You have to avoid predators. You have to survive. So survival is the only concern of evolution. And in order to survive, we have a very strong aversion learning. You put your hand in fire once, you never want to put your hand in fire again. Avoid. The horse doesn't want to go there. Once hurt, never wants to go there. So we are programmed. The rider, the human, says, it's only your mother who hurt you. It's only your father that hurt you. You don't have to avoid all men and all women. But the horse doesn't want. The horse doesn't understand language. The horse just wants to procreate and survive. That's all. Well, so we are in trouble because the horse is very powerful in us. The mammal, mostly we are mammals with a bit of humanity. And actually, the humanity interferes with some very important life functions, like Michel Audin has been trying to speak very loud, saying that the neocortex interferes with a woman's capacity to give birth. Now he says the best thing to do with a woman who is giving birth is not speak to her. As soon as she is asked to understand or respond in language, she already abandons her animal, and the animal knows precisely how to give birth without any trouble. The animal doesn't need human words. Animal doesn't need company. Animals can give birth by themselves. So it goes back and forth. The human brain interferes with the animal brain interferes with the human brain, and underneath it all, there is the reptilian brain, which just wants Lidija and Andrew to live, beats your heart and keeps you alive. So we are a mixed bag.
Yeah, we're a mixed bag. What reminds me of, because I'm just studying with Bonnie Bainbridge-Cohen about the body and the evolution of the brain, and she has a little bit different perspective in a sense that here we are, we developed these brains, and the evolution worked so that we didn't change, let's say, the horse brain as we became mammal. We just maintained the horse brain, but created another brain due to the form following the function, and you can say, I guess, survival and desire to be alive, and then created this whole umbrella on top of it. And then the cortex came on top of it, but that we are made naturally to communicate with these brains. Is what stops the communication. It's actually the impact of the environment, and it kind of goes back. I mean, I'm not opposing what you're saying, but it's almost seemed like, let's say, if we experience something like a big earthquake of trauma, and it stays somehow within this horse brain. I remember you always talking about the using a co-X that often Groff talks about, but you're talking about our body being kind of like an onion. We're resonating, it resonating with everything that is going on, and the trauma is actually a place, a dot, where there is this elastic band that is attached to it, and we live our life until something comes and triggered this, and then this elastic bands just go back straight into that point of trauma, and we get fixated in this horse brain. But so that's one thing. But I remember you saying that talking about the trauma, it's actually we're missing the point. What is underlying under the trauma, or you could say phenomenologically, what is the cause why we continue living with the trauma, is the fact that we are powerless. You talk a lot about the powerless and the power versus ill and healthy.
Well, trauma is a disaster. I mean, trauma is a surprise where you realize that the world isn't how you would like it to be. You know, when someone who is supposed to protect you, like someone who is supposed to be acting like a mother, a man who is supposed to act as a father, Jung called them archetypes. The archetype of the father should be ruling the actions of a man who has a child. The archetype of mother should be informing the actions of a woman who is looking after her child. But if the woman is not surrendering to the archetype, then it looks like you have a mother, but you don't. And if the father, for example, wants to use his daughter sexually, then he's not a father anymore. He's not under the archetype of the father. The archetype of the father doesn't allow the father to have any desire towards his child. So the surprise of the child that suddenly I have no father, this man who I thought was my father is actually who wants to exploit me and is objectifying me and using me as to blow his cock into like a handkerchief. The degradation, especially from someone who I loved and expected protection from, is such a disappointment that basically I don't want to live after that. It's like, what am I here for? Like, it's unfair, it's unjust. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm powerless, as you say. There is no way I can even imagine how I could ever accrue and maintain sufficient power to set things right. And if my father can do that, if my mother can do that, if a friend can do that, hurt me, then anybody could. Like, how am I going to, I won't trust anybody. So trust is broken when there is a trauma. And in a way, to suffer an earthquake, to survive an earthquake is nothing in comparison to being betrayed by a parent. Like, the worst trauma is betrayal trauma. When you believe one thing and suddenly the rug is pulled out from under you and there is nothing to hang on to, and you feel like you are falling, free fall, and you'll be destroyed without anybody caring. So in another way of putting it, when you have a heart connection, you hallucinate a heart connection, and actually someone uses their power, the third chakra, the power chakra, they are operating through power, not the heart. And when you realize that someone is relating to you through the power chakra and their heart is closed, you feel like dying. You feel like calling it quits. You feel like it would be better to be dead than to be alive.
And it's
So,
almost,
trauma is really, what does one do after the disaster? Like, how was my mother expected to live after Auschwitz? Like, people sort of, well, that was in the past. But, how could one live when human beings did to her what human beings did to her? Like, how could she ever trust another human being? And if you can't trust anyone, then you are very much alone. And it may not be that much fun to be alone, even in company.
Yeah. And I suppose even the timing of of such an event, such as you're saying, is a disaster, when it's happening, you often speak about if it's happening before the language appear and when it happens after the language appear, it makes a big difference. I just know that with children who are treated badly, almost never say that person is bad. They actually say, I am bad, because if I'm not like a piece of shit, how could somebody treat me like such?
Yeah, children cognitively cannot process the truth, which is, if I feel bad, it's because somebody's treating me badly. Children think it gives them hope. If I feel bad, it's because I am bad, because then there is at least a hope of I'll get better and then I'll be treated better. But it's not true. Children are not treated badly because they are bad. Children are treated badly because their parents don't give a fuck about them.
It's interesting. Just as you're speaking right now, I'm thinking maybe that's why we're addicted to actually find a therapist or somebody who will just tell us what to do. And so we're very used to then finding a figure who will tell us for us to get better, as opposed to actually be in the space of being authentic and real and living one's life rather than being better.
Well, yeah, if I'm bad, then I'd like somebody to fix me. And it's very hard for people to realize that they were innocent, that they didn't deserve what people did to them. You know? It's very hard because then nothing makes sense. You know, fairy tales, many fairy tales, European fairy tales, are full of if you do good things, then good things will come to you. You know, you save a frog, you save a fish, you save an animal, and then later those animals help you when you need help. The moral of a lot of fairy tales is if you're good, you're going to be rewarded. And there is Trungpa going around hitting people over the head with his fan, saying, pain is not punishment. Pleasure is not reward. Like, wake up. There is no such thing as deserve. I mean, you know, such a simple concept. Nobody wants to know.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I remember this quote of yours, and I'm going to read it out loud. I am is a spiritual statement of our responsibility to manifest our particular quantum of the spirit within the resistance and medium of our earthly lives. It might be wrong to copy or to pretend, yet the pressure to do so are great. To free ourselves from the depressing compulsion to be good, we need strength and courage to seek our truth. So you're saying the myth of goodness is what keeps us in a shackle.
Yeah, but you know, you have to be good. Is an invitation to be theatrical. Is pretend you're good.
Mm-hmm.
And so then everything becomes theater. And again, in theater, you have stage fright. So again, as another source of anxiety is stage fright, that I want you to think I'm good. But inside, I know I am bad. I just pretend to be good. And I'm afraid you're going to see through my act to my essential rottenness. And that makes me very anxious because I'm an actor. So the cure for depression is not to act. But it's very scary not to act when from the time you can remember, you had to be the good daughter of your parents, you had to be the good student at school, then you had to be the good wife of your husband, then you had to be the good mother of your child. Now, if you go into therapy, you have to be the good patient of your therapist. Like, burden upon burden upon burden. And the truth is, you don't have to be good. And the first person I know who wrote about this, and I'm surprised he wasn't burnt at the stake, was Paracelsus. He was the first European physician over 600 years ago. He said, if there's a yes in your heart, say yes, even if it is evil. If there is a no in your heart, say no, even if it is evil, for that's the only way thou shalt be known. So he was the first one who said it's more important to be candid than good. It wasn't giving permission to be bad, but it was trust your heart. Speak your truth is more important than being good.
Mm-hmm.
Like risk doing what you need to do, even if other people will think that you're evil.
I have a client who just spoke about her son compulsively lying. And it's almost just reminded me now as you were speaking. So would that also be the expression of, like, if you are saying lies, then your truth is not good enough. So you are going to be acting out in wanting to
Yeah, it's never psychologists or psychiatrists who get these things right. It's poets and writers. Like it was Adrienne Rich, in one of her, she wrote a book on why do women lie to women. It's true for men too, but she was only interested in women. And she said, we lie to each other because we think our truth is not good enough. I lied to my mother because she wasn't my friend.
Mhm.
I lied to my mother because only stupid people tell the truth to the enemy. So if my mother is my enemy, I would have to be stupid not to lie to her, because any truth I gave her, she used it to control me, against me. If she would have used anything I told her to love me better, I wouldn't have lied to her. You know, any child who is lying compulsively is because he's trying to survive
Unloving environment.
an environment that where if he probably told the truth at one time and learned that he will get punished for it. You know, if I tell the truth and you punish me for it, and I can't escape from you, then I will lie to you. And then the funny thing is, you'll get punished for lying. So, you know, lying is just a guerrilla tactic. For me, it was an intellectual milestone because my mother wanted me to think that she was like God, that she could see through me. I wrote, she bought me when I was a kid, like before potty training, a glass potty. So I sat on it and she said, have you produced shit? And I wanted her to get off my back and I would say yes. But she could see. Like I couldn't lie to her. Even my potty was transparent. I didn't even have privacy, whether I'm shitting or not. I had to shit for her so she would see it. So I remember I thought that she really knew that she knew that I was transparent to her. And I remember maybe I was about 6 or 7 when I first lied to her, and she didn't know I was lying. And I said, "Hooray! I'm not transparent. I have privacy." So it's very important for a child to have privacy, and even at the cost of lying. So if your child lies, it's because you're not the child's friend.
Wow. I would like to ask you about you call yourself a radical therapist in a sense of the Latin radix, that means the root, going into the root of things. And also Laing would call himself the interpersonal social phenomenologist. So I would like you to speak a little bit about that. But before I say so, it's anytime I was in presence of you in the therapy, I feel that it was not important so much of what you are talking or what we are talking, but it was more about the space of transmission that I felt I was coming out with, in a sense that I am just being kind of allowed, and not just allowed, that I could be myself fully. And I recently met a Hungarian woman who was present in one of your speeches in Hungary when you were interviewed by a famous woman psychologist who took apparently a lot of her time talking, and you were just sitting there. And she says the space of people around, they felt a little bit uncomfortable because she was talking so much and she invited you on interview. And she took her eyes from that woman and she looked at you, and you were sitting there completely comfortable within yourself, not really speaking much. And she said that she felt this almost like infection of what I would call the presence of love, or just a relaxation of being who you are. And so for me, when you're speaking about the radical therapy, this is what I'm experiencing. It's not the words, it's something that is being transmitted. So tell me more about the
Well, Laing said,
alchemy.
Laing liked mathematical approaches like bare bones. He said that what helps is the difference in state of consciousness between patient and therapist. The bigger the differences between their state of consciousness, the more effective therapy is. And hopefully it's in the direction of the therapist being in a higher state of consciousness that allows then the patient to also move towards a higher state of consciousness. If the patient has a higher state of consciousness than the therapist, then the therapist should be paying the patient. Because then the therapist benefits. He said the effectiveness is directly proportional to how much time we spend together. So the more time, the better results. The bigger the difference in consciousness, the better results. And inversely proportional to the distance. Like now, we are talking a few miles apart through a screen. That's not very good. But if we were only 1 foot apart in the same room, it would be better. So the closer two people are physically, those are the 3 factors. The actual talking is just an excuse for being close together for a long time. Otherwise, people wouldn't know what to do. So the talking is just an alibi for being together. Laing said the only thing that he has to radiate is harmlessness and calm. Like he says, it acts like it's better, it has a better effect on the nervous system of the patient than an anti-anxiety or an antidepressant. Like half an hour sitting with him, the most agitated patient calms down because he's calm, because he's harmless. People get upset because they are afraid. And if the therapist is radiating zero fear and zero intent to harm, so not only am I harmless, but I also expect you not to harm me. So I'm not afraid and I'm not dangerous. Then that's all the other person needs to calm down. The horse immediately knows that there is no danger.
Isn't that interesting that even the vow of the medicine was not go and do good? It was do not harm. And same in yoga, it was not, oh, do so and so. It was ahimsa, non-violence. So it almost makes me think that all those practitioners that are coming with some idea or technique or thinking that they're going to do something good for the patient is coming into the same trap.
Yeah, but that's okay. Again, Laing told me when I was critical of techniques and so on, he said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter. Like, it's all an alibi. Like, even if somebody is doing a technique that is totally stupid, if they are loving and open-hearted and harmless, it will be successful because it's not the words, it's as you say, it's the presence. It's somebody who is operating from the heart chakra calms the person who is coming in from a world of power chakra encounters. An asylum, the therapist's office, becomes a play space because you can do anything and you won't get hurt. You won't be punished. There are no consequences. There is nothing to be afraid of in the consulting room. If there is, then it's not going to work, no matter what technique you use. So it's not a question of it is really the therapist has to work on their own being, not on figuring out what to do. It's the being that counts, not the doing. It's
when
just, we can't.
Higher consciousness, could you tell me more about that? When you say the therapists actually need to, what does that mean? The higher consciousness, or the resting in the quality of being. I mean, I'm thinking from the Buddhist perspective, I would define it somehow, but I wonder what you would say it. What is this for you?
There is nothing to control. That everything is okay. Radical acceptance. That willing nothing. I mean, even though I say the only proper function of the will is to will, not to will, I'm not 100% surrendered. But during a session, in a way, when people pay me, then I practice. I go to that state of consciousness where I'm not willing anything, where I'm open, so that if you are a fruit of the universe, because I say the apple tree apples, the universe peoples. So if you are one bit of the universe and I am another bit of the universe, so here we are separate. If while I am with you, I'm down here, then you might come down here and realize that there is nothing to do, that you go to where you originally come from, you reconnect to what is bigger than you, and then you realize that these connections are not as important as this connection. So your parents hurt you up here, but nothing can ever hurt you down here. So the more time you spend here, the less you worry about what goes on here. It's not that you don't have emotions, but the great actor, a great Russian bass singer, Shalyapin, played Boris Godunov in the Opera House, and his 5-year-old son was in the audience watching him. And there is a terrible dying scene in Boris Godunov where Boris Godunov falls to the ground and he's dying for minutes, wriggling on the, and Shalyapin noticed that his son got scared that his father is dying. And without falling out of role, he was still dying. He winked at his son, and his son relaxed.
Wow.
Now, that's the deal. Here, it's just opera. Here, we can wink at each other.
Well, on the other hand, you said that love, well, I guess what you're speaking about is love. And I just want to put a quote here, because Laing was not shy about talking about that at all. And actually, it's his quote that you were putting in the book, saying, without the experience of love, or at least a memory of love, or memory of a hallucination of it, life is not worth living. So when somebody comes into the office of somebody whose practices love and love as non-harming?
Well, love is non-harming. One definition of love is I could hurt you and I won't. So the
Yeah.
definition of love is I could hurt you and I won't. It's a miracle.
Yeah. So just by itself, that it's coming into the space of miracle.
Yeah, love is harmlessness. Also, love is taking delight in the other. Like if somebody comes to see me and, I'm not enlightened, I'm not, I don't love everybody. But if somebody comes who I can't take delight in, I send them to someone else. Maybe someone else could take delight in. That's why Michael Barden died last week. And I could refer to him because he had a huge heart. He could take delight in people I couldn't. So when I couldn't take delight in stuff, I could send them to him, and there was a good chance that he could.
So you see, that's why he died. You meaning saying that because his heart was so big that it had to?
No, that's not. I didn't say that's why. I'm just saying I'll miss him because I don't know where to send people who I can't delight in. But I noticed that Laing could delight in more people than I could. There are people I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. Well, I can't be the therapist of a person I can't touch with a 10-foot pole. I'll send them to somebody who can embrace them. It would be unprofessional for me to work with anybody I can't love.
Yeah, and all people, I think when you were giving a talk in Benyon Books about your book Credo, that somebody asked the question about the ultimate love, if somebody comes into, and how can one hold the space about that willfully? How can one be always in this space that we would always as a therapist have to be in this space of loving whoever comes our way? Yours answer was that you would not touch, if you, not just somebody that you don't necessarily take delight in, but when it comes to seeing evil, that you would not, you think evil is absolutely not, cannot be affected by the therapy.
No. And Scott Peck was the only psychiatrist I ever read. He was very brave. In People of the Lie, he basically says that evil is not amenable to psychotherapy. So when an evil person comes to his door, he kicks the person out. He says the only thing you can do with evil is escape from it. I'm not Superman. Like evil people can only do harm. That's what they want. That's what delights them. Just as love wants to do no harm, evil is in their freedom. They choose to not respect life,
And
to get off on other people's suffering. Like, how can you do therapy with someone who is deliberately getting off on hurting other people, doing harm? Dangerous. Like Scott Peck describes how he knew that the patient was evil because he got a terrific headache. He wanted to go home and never practice again. So he thought, why is that? And then he realized that actually what the person was doing was unconscionable and evil. And so he had to say, never step across my threshold again.
What would you suggest if there is any I guess, suggestion if somebody would want to practice this type of therapy, or what can they do, and how can they become one?
To be in therapy, like,
No, not to be
Ronnie
therapy,
said,
but to be the therapist.
yeah. But
Oh,
the
to be
only
the
way,
therapist. Yes.
the only way to be the kind of therapist that I think is how a therapist needs to be, is to be in therapy to begin with, to be an apprentice with someone. Like Laing said, when I decided to go and study with him, he was here on tour, and he put a question to the people who came to his workshop, which was, they were all therapists, and said, are you a therapist as an ego trip, or are you a therapist because you're a healer? And I remember I didn't know, I wasn't sure. So that's what motivated me to go to England and work with him. I said, well, how does one become a healer? And he said, well, either you're born one or you apprentice with a healer. There is no other way. I didn't think I was born one, so I had to apprentice.
Apprentice with another human. Yeah.
No, another healer.
No, another here that is a human and not institution. Like he didn't say go into institution.
No. There is no institutions are. It has nothing to do with anything. Yeah. Okay, it's time.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good to speak with you. Bye.
Bye.